it was used by a saint or a malefactor. Realizing its importance, you can save it or use it sensibly because you have learned that it bears the stamp of the authority that guides you in the daily struggle. Money is a representation of the acquisitive power of the temporal government to which you were subject. Hence, you do not argue about its origin. You respect and use it according to the possibilities it represents. Renewing and edifying ideas arise in the same way. Why should we expect them to be approved by our family members or personal friends in order for them to produce a wholesome effect within us and around us? Every consoling and instructive page is a gift from heaven. It does not matter if the thoughts contained on it have come from the mind of our earthly parents, our children, our dear friends, or our fellow human beings. What matters is the usefulness it may offer us. The money you used to buy bread today may have been in the hands of your worst enemy yesterday, but it is still a blessing that ensures your sustenance due to its value. Consequently, a message, whatever its source may be, that leads us to the good or to the truth is always valuable and holy in essence, because if we use it in our soul and in our daily experience, we may acquire the eternal talents of wisdom and love, for they are a tool of salvation that has come from the infinite mercy of our Heavenly Father. Let us seek the light, whatever it may be, and the darkness will never reach us. All right, that is a wonderful page brought to us by the Spirit Emmanuel. Andreia has said good morning. She's already here with us. She'll be doing our talk today. So right now, I would invite you to join me for a short prayer before we start with our main lecture for today. So let's just say, dear Father, thank you so much for this beautiful day, for the opportunity that we have to be here this morning, seeking to be closer to you, seeking to connect with what is essential in our lives, seeking the light, seeking peace and love. For this opportunity, we are very thankful. We ask for your blessings, for your presence. Ask you to embrace us all in both realms of life as we spend this hour together nourishing our souls. Bless in particular our friend Andreia this morning as she will be delivering today's message. For this new day, for this new opportunity, thank you so much, and so be it. All right, good morning, Juan. And here is Andreia with us. Good morning, Andreia.
Good morning. Good morning.
I don't think we have ever, since COVID started, been together on a live.
True.
So here we are. I'm very happy to be here with you today, and I'm going to pass on to you for the lecture today.
Thank
See you
you.
soon.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Juan, Carlos. It is always great to be connected with our conscious living family. And today's topic is spiritual responsibility. We wanted to first and foremost point out the books that were used for our reflections today, just in case you want to dive deeper into the content of these amazing books. And the first one that we are going to begin with is Prelude to the Divine Kingdom by the Spirit author Amélia Rodrigues through the mediumship of Divaldo Franco, as well as A Light in the Darkness by Joana de Angelis and Divaldo Franco, and The Gospel According to Spiritism by Allan Kardec, as we always like to bring back these books from the Spiritist codification to illustrate some of the teachings that we decide to bring on a Sunday morning, on a Tuesday, wherever the case may be. The conversation found on Matthew chapter 19, verses 16 through 30, was profound and meaningful and deserving of our thoughts today. The rich young man asked, "Master, what good things must I do to get eternal life?" In which Jesus answered, "Why do you ask me about what is good? There is only one who is good. If you want to enter life, keep the commandments." "Which ones?" he inquired to Jesus. And he answered, "You shall not murder. You shall not commit adultery. You shall not steal. You shall not give false testimony. Honor your father and mother, and love your neighbor as yourself." The rich young man answered, "All of these I have kept. What do I still lack?" Through a very strange intuition, Amelia Rodriguez states that the rich young man knew that eventually he would be face to face with reality, a spiritual reality, that is. For when he asked, "What do I still lack?" he wasn't ready for the answer that came. She will state that at that moment, it's as if everything stood still, and the rich young man, in front of that eternal reality, ready for the answer, yet fearful of what it might be, he hears the sweet yet austere voice from the Master in stating, "If you are willing to be perfect, go and sell all you have and give it to the poor, and then you will have treasure in heaven. And then come and follow me." The voice pierced like a sharp knife deep into his soul. The unmistakable magnetism emitted by those eyes, by that voice, those who had heard it, those who had seen it, knew the desire at that moment to just throw oneself to the floor, kneel before the Master. Yet the rich young man stood there. He was thirsting for peace. He had everything, materially speaking, yet he yearned for peace, a peace of his soul. He was not quiet deep within. It was noisy, it was confusing, it was disturbing, and he knew that clearly something was missing. Even though he wavered. His villa was luxurious, his possessions magnificent, but he knew his heart was empty. He kept hearing, "Go and sell everything, then follow me." And he thought about all of those moments that young heart desired everywhere: happiness, parties, the constant invitations, the delightful and vigorous body that he had, showing that he had all of the possibilities of youth. Yet he yearned for higher aspirations. Afflicted and distraught at that moment, he was unaware of the cause of his persistent melancholy, but he knew that in that invitation lie the answers to all of his questions. He stood there, the gentleness and the command of that voice emanating from the Master echoed in his spirit. He wanted to shout. He wanted to say, "I will go with you." Yet he hesitated. The hour did not allow for any doubt. He knew that not only was it a very meaningful, profound, filled with significant moment, it was also vital for his life. He stood there looking at the Master, and the celestial friend, when he met his gaze yet again, the rich young man felt naked. His heart was pounding fast, and unusual emotions never felt before vibrated throughout all of his body. He saw the stranger smiling at him, waiting for the answer. He thought, "I think he loves me," and then immediately he heard, "Yes, I do love you." He heard again, "If you want to be perfect, go, sell your possessions, give it to the poor, and you will have treasure in heaven. Then come and follow me." The rich young man, when he was able to speak again, his mouth was dry. He was able to say, let me Let me first compete in the games in Caesarea and win the prizes for Israel. People are counting on me, you see. The master answered, I cannot wait. The kingdom of heaven starts today for your soul, and now for your spirit. There is no time to lose. The rich young man said, but I have waited so long for this. It's just one moment. I have bought the best horses. I have trained with the best slaves. I spent the fortunes and the game will start very soon. No, renounce everything and follow me. Who was he? How could he speak like that without knowing the troubles deep within his heart? He wanted to stay. He wanted to flee. He felt utterly distressed, this turmoil pounding within him. It's what Amelia Rodriguez will state. It happens in the lives of those who encounter reality one time or another. She describes it as that horizontality of human afflictions meeting the verticality of divine sublimation, that existential conflict that eventually all of those who follow him will encounter one day or another. And fighting an overwhelming fear, the rich young man said, I can give everything. I have money, I have gold, I have jewels, titles. It would be so easy, but give me of yourself, Jesus answered, and I will offer you the everlasting bliss. What a high reward, he thought, and what a high price to pay. Did he need to give up the riches of his youth, the vibrant treasures of vanities and fancies, the family honors upheld by titles and tradition, the admirers and flatterers? Would it be necessary to renounce all of that? And he heard in the soul, yes, that was the reply. He looked at the master, gazes meeting one another, one filled with anxiety, the other gaze filled with love. He was able to say, I can't. Forgive me if you love me. And he walked away fast, as if he didn't at that moment, he wouldn't be able to walk away. A week later, we would find the rich young man in Caesarea. Amelia Rodriguez narrates that the ambiance, the atmosphere was of festivities, of the traditions of its time, the sounds of different music, opening up the type of celebration that was to take place. Chariot competitions opened the races. She will say, the whips lashing in the air, hands tied on the rein, charioteers speeding up their fragile vehicles. All of a sudden, a very poor maneuver, and the fragile two-wheeled cars fall over, and a rich young man falls to the ground. Horses are running by, and the wheels that were coming basically running over him. Slaves able to pull him away before it was all too late. And he felt the mixtures of tears, of sweat and blood on his muddy face. He could hear that sweet voice speaking deep in his soul. Renounce everything. Come and follow me. All he was able to utter was, oh dear friend. All of a sudden, in the midst of his physical pain and agony, he felt two invisible arms embracing him. That magnetism back yet again in his life. And if it wasn't for the situation itself, undoubtedly the slaves looked at him. He was in pain, yet it looked like he had a smile when he finally closed his eyes for the last time. The story is very profound when we consider the spiritual responsibilities of our lives, the commitments of our existence. When I was young, I thought about my own dreams of what a life filled with responsibilities would be. A good job, maybe a good marriage, kids, a good position in society, being able to pay for your home, all of the dreams that we have when we are young, yet unaware that our lives in reality have a lot more than just those material responsibilities. Susanna opened our reading today with the title, Let Us Seek Light. And it's amazing because we were planning to talk about that voice that still echoes for over 2,000 years, stating, walk while you have the light so that darkness does not overtake you. When we consider this and we think about Spiritism, this light that we have illuminating our path and bringing us content so necessary for our souls as immortal spirits, we consider ourselves to be walking with the light. And yet we have to wonder, are we truly utilizing the light? Are we truly seeking that light so that darkness does not overtake us? And when we look at our current society today, all of the challenges, all of the difficulties, one must truly reflect about this. In the book that will be coming out very soon, On the Way to a World of Regeneration, by the spirit author Manuel Filomeno de Miranda, which was released late December of last year, about the current state of our globe in facing the pandemic, COVID-19. He describes our planet as being observed from the spirit plane, as being slowly enveloped by a massive mantle of darkness. And he describes that mantle of darkness as being the fruit of somber spiritual fluids that came from the harmful mental emanations of the inhabitants, of everybody who resides on the earth. Not everybody, but he talks about it, a collective responsibility for what is currently taking place. And we talk about individual responsibility, but when we think about it collectively, we see that perhaps we have a little bit of a responsibility for what is happening with our globe today. Walk while you have the light so that darkness does not overtake you. So here we have Spiritism 164 years later, with the release of the Spirit's book, bringing us the content about this dawn of a new era that is calling upon men and women to wake up and be truly responsible for one's own life. Today is the release of the book Heaven and Hell. The year, I'm sorry, escaping my mind right now, but it was on August 1st that the book was released. And in it, on the second part, we see testimonies of spirits who return to tell us about their condition. And Allan Kardec published it as if to say, here is the content that is pertaining to your lives, and you choose your reality based on whatever it is that speaks to your soul. We have encountered the light. Spiritism is the promised consoler for humanity, symbolically speaking, as if Jesus is walking side by side with us, talking about our responsibilities. Here he is, as if to say, be faithful to the duties that have been entrusted upon you. And we are going to find in the Gospel according to Spiritism this aspect about being faithful and observing the duties, which the Spirit Lazar is going to explain as being that moral obligation, first towards oneself and then immediately towards someone else. We are no longer children, spiritually speaking, emotionally speaking. We are not children. We were able to receive these messages that bring about this importance of our duties and commitments and responsibilities because we are able to assimilate it and we are able to do something about it. Duty, Lazar is going to say, is the law of life. It is found in the smallest details as well as the most elevated one. And we're not talking about those that we dreamed about when we were kids, duty imposed by professions, but talking about the moral duty. While we can only attain it when we are aware of our spiritual responsibility. Duty is what he's going to say is going to be left to their free will. And that is something else that we must really ponder about. A lot is being said about free will, about the rights an individual has in society, and that's correct. Yet we know that in free will, when we utilize it, we are free to basically sow, but we are going to be reaping the result from our decisions. It is what he talks about when we are fully aware of our duties. It is that sting in our conscience. It's what they call the guardian of inner integrity that is warning us, that is upholding us, that is holding us back. But he talks about it also being something that is powerless when it comes face to face with our passions, vanities, immediate need for material pleasure. And when faithfully observed, this sense of duty is what is going to uplift us. But then we ask, how is it that we are to determine about the rights, about this aspect of duty? And this is a question that is asked. Where does it begin and where does it end? And so Lazarus will say that duty is precisely at the point in which we threaten someone else's happiness or peace of mind. And the limit we would not want to see surpassing, overcoming, overboarding regarding ourselves. It is that practical summary of all moral speculation. It is the courage of the soul who is able to confront the difficulties of life's struggle. It is both strict and yielding, ready to adapt to the diverse complications of our lives, yet it remains unbending before temptation. We see it as an individual who is fully aware of life's commitments and responsibility. And he will say that people who fulfill duty love God more than they love individuals, and they love others more than they love themselves. This is what he brings us as being this beautiful oral of reason. And it depends on it like a child depends on a mother. This is how we depend on the sense of duty, because it basically tells us what we should do, what we should not do. And the other day we were discussing about this. How is it that I determine what my duty, what my moral obligations and responsibilities are? This is why we are going to hear the spirits telling Allan Kardec that we have within us the divine laws printed deep into our conscience. Lazarus will say that individuals' moral obligation towards God never ceases. It never stops. It should reflect the virtues of the divine laws that does not accept an imperfect sketch. And God is waiting for us to be able to understand that voice, that sting within our conscience, so that we become no longer a sketch, but a beautiful, beautiful project that has already been perfected and is replenished before him. It is very beautiful. Joana de Angelis, in the book A Light in the Dark Night, she will state, human beings are what they make of themselves. It lies within the search for what gives life purposes, what is of vital importance, especially concerning the soul. This is what she talks about, the fact that we are what we make of ourselves. So let's consider about this for a minute, how empowering truly Spiritism is in our lives when we see that we are what we make of ourselves. So we are no longer going to be considered victims of circumstances. She's going to say that it doesn't matter what happened, any and all activities that we assume end up becoming duties demanding responsibility. Whatever it is that we choose to do in our lives, any sort of activity, she says, that we assume is going to become duties demanding responsibility in our lives. And when we look at our lives, appreciating from a spiritist perspective, we start to understand our physical existence and telling what she calls multiple educational programs, that even though sometimes it might hurt, they are what is going to contribute to our moral and intellectual development. The other day, I was talking about this case that I read on Facebook about this couple who had a child with microcephaly. Now, when she was pregnant and the doctors noted that there was that type of situation developing in her womb with her fetus, he suggested that she abort. Because even if the baby survived childbirth, even if it survived the birth, the child most likely would not live long. And so when she heard that, very profound Christians, both husband and wife, told the doctor that God had chosen them to give life to that child who was theirs, but first and foremost, it was God's. And they had no right to take away the life, even if it meant the child would live for a few hours. And so they did. This is a sense of commitment that we see programs that are developed beyond we incarnate, that sometimes is going to be very tough and difficult, that is going to really make us struggle. Yet a strong sense of duty is really what speaks to the eternal soul when faced with situations such as this one. Jackson, the baby's name, went on to live for a few years, and the love that they had for the child was truly exemplary to many parents who are fearful and afraid of certain situations such as that one. And many of them became encouraged to face the difficulty and see the child as a child in need of love, of care, of dedication, and 100% commitment from both parents. They helped so many people. And I kept imagining the beauty that surrounded the life of those three spirits, and how much Jackson, in that existence, going through his own trials and expiations, all based on the great law of cause and effect, what he conquered for his soul, the steps that he took as ascending to a higher understanding about life, as his own spirit evolved. So it's truly beautiful to see this, because Joana de Angelis is going to tell us that reincarnation, regardless of how it might be, regardless of it might be happening, painful or not, is that extraordinary opportunity that we have to fulfill our responsibility, making amends for the past, correcting any wrongdoings, and bringing about that moral rehabilitation for our souls. We start looking and appreciating our life as that beautiful gift that we have been given by our Father, our Creator. The greatest proof of his love for his children is reincarnation. We have lived so many lives like kids, like children, unaware of the responsibilities pertaining to our growth. We have no more time to lose. We are here in the here and now. Walk while you have the light, so that darkness does not overtake you. Joana de Angelis is going to tell us that according to the severity of each occurrences from a previous existence, there is a specific course of action meant to rebalance the individual's lucidity, fostering discipline, all of it envisioning the promotion of one's happiness. And when we look at some of the spirits that came back in the book Heaven and Hell by Allan Kardec to tell us about their own responsibilities that they were able to fulfill even through pain, even through sweat and tear, they talk to us. What is it, a few years of difficulties when you have eternity to look forward to as you ascend, spiritually speaking? And this is something for us to consider as well. And she talks about how some of the reincarnations are painful and demands from us a lot related to our moral and spiritual responsibilities. And it is not meant to be punitive, as a lot of people think. It's a punishment from God. Spiritism erases this idea because our Father is all love and justice and charity towards us. It is one of the laws for which he's the author of. But she talks to us about the fact that when we are facing a difficult challenge in our life and the suffering is present and affliction comes out from that suffering, it is basically a discomfort calling our attention to order, to discipline, and the responsibility and duty. Nobody said it would be easy, but they said it would be worth it. Isn't that a phrase that we hear so much? When we look at it, the spirits who were able to fulfill what they were supposed to. Ivone do Amaral Pereira, the author of the book Memoirs of a Suicide, whose life as someone who had committed suicide many, many, many times, over and over again through different type of reincarnations, reincarnated in this life to bring this book, one of the best written books for spiritist literature that is deep and heavy, yet it shows us about the beautiful blessings of life. And her life was supposed to have accomplished writing that book, all of it, through the difficulties of her financial she did not have a life very well financially speaking. She was not very fulfilled with a family like you and I would be with our husband, with our wives, with our kids. It was a life of struggles, of suffering, but she completed. And not only did she complete it, she actually went above it, as we would hear from other people who knew about this present existence and how much she went through. It's what the missionaries of the life in the book would call the completers, people who reincarnate with a certain type of mission, if you will. We all have missions, and not only were they able to complete it, they actually went above what was expected of them to do in this life. The thing is that responsibility is going to develop intelligence, emotion, and discernment, which is all needed for our future illumination. It's what's going to enable us to develop certain type of experiences where we are able to develop solidarity, fraternity, where we are able to develop love. So trials and testimonies are the necessary corrections that we have. And sometimes they do arise, and they are all aligned with the great laws that rule the soul anywhere it might find itself in the universe. Understanding the divine laws is difficult. It is very difficult to understand the law of cause and effect. But the law of cause and effect is unbending. It is not developed to fulfill our lives as this or that. It is the same. Our understanding of it is what changes as we keep evolving, as we keep growing. The same applies to all of the other laws that we know about. This is why it's important that we study, to understand the law of progress, to understand the law of reincarnation, to understand that our lives at this time is here so that we are not only living for ourselves, but we are also making it a point to live for others as well. This is why in Spiritism we hear so much, without charity, there is no salvation. And one often misunderstands this aspect about salvation. Albert Schweitzer was someone that I really loved. He talked about this aspect of living one's life, knowing that their future happiness depended on how they find an opportunity to serve others. It's what Karen Armstrong will say, the need for us to develop compassion as we are fulfilling our obligations, in which we dethrone ourselves from the center of our world and we have the courage to place someone else there. Individual responsibility, collective responsibility. So Joana de Angeli is going to tell us in The Light in the Darkness that we have to try and make the decision to live life joyfully, experiencing well-being, fulfilling our spiritual obligations, even during the not so happy times that we face. And she talks about seeking the ethical behavior, the type of behavior of everyone who has encountered Jesus. So there is a modification of how we look at our lives, of how we fulfill our responsibility, of how we are able to respond to the noble invitation, give me of yourself and follow me. The invitation of Christ to that rich young man. Every time we talk about the people who encounter Jesus, we are going to find him calling upon men and women to develop that sense of responsibility. When he healed someone, the phrase, go and don't sin anymore, placing that responsibility upon the shoulder of the men and women who would seek him so that they would be aware that there was something to do, a modification of what brought on the illnesses on the first place. Go and don't sin anymore. The awakening to one's inner divine essence is fundamental for us to truly understand and start observing our lives. And you may be asking, how is it that I know about my moral and spiritual responsibility? We are going to silence and understand that when we are fulfilling our duties as citizens, as family members, as moral individuals, there is going to be a positive result of it, even if it calls for us to make certain struggles. This is why the spirit author Manuel Filomeno de Miranda is going to say that fulfillment of our duty is a blessing of uncontestable value, demonstrating that the spirit is reaching a psychological maturity and is thus developing their own sense of moral responsibility. That's when duty becomes a virtue. When its objective of fulfilling a responsibility is not only benefiting others, is not only benefiting oneself, but it is benefiting the social group, society. That one that we wish to see changed is also waiting for us to individually and collectively make or participate in it so that we are walking while we have the light, encouraging others, and darkness does not overtake us. When we commit to these type of spiritual obligations and responsibilities, the process of our own moral growth is going to open up before us, and we are going to understand life a lot better. So, what is the spiritist responsibility in that sense? It is to cooperate in the progress of humankind by practicing charity in the most far outreaching sense that we have heard of, which is benevolence towards everyone. We all have the ability to be benevolent towards others, diminishing the sense of hatred that we see in society, road rage, being intolerant with others, being short, being vulgar, all of those. Benevolence towards everyone. Indulgence for others' imperfection, for we know that we also wish others to be indulgent with our own imperfections. And then we are going to see forgiveness of offenses, which is the hardest one, and we understand, yet it is part of charity as understood by Christ. Without charity, there is no salvation. We're talking about the ascension of the Spirit as it grows, as it expands in knowledge. It is also needed to expand in moral ethics and qualities as well. In this sense, those who have found Jesus, our guide and model for humanity, we are going to see that we are going to become individuals in society, fulfilling our professional responsibilities, contributing to a society in a way that it is more peaceful. Even if others are not doing their part, we are. And in this sense, we are going to see a world that is going to be with less prejudice of any type of kind, color, ethnicity, gender, whatever it might be. We are going to see that those of us who have already encountered Jesus are being called upon to fulfill the age, appropriate spiritual age of spiritual responsibility that we have already reached, and own up to it. Even when difficulties and trials are here, we are going to also realize that benevolent spirits are walking side by side with us, those missionaries of Christ, to encourage us, to uphold us, to remind us of what needs to be done, but also consoling us and giving us the peaceful understanding that in this life we were called upon to serve ourselves, serve others as well. On this note, I'm gonna call back my lovely hostess with the mostest. Um, turn the word back to you.
Um, I love the talk. I was here reflecting. Actually, I opened my own gospel to read again the passage about duty. Um, and it says here that um, duty, in the order of all the sentiments, is one of the most difficult things for us to fulfill because it's against our self-interest. So I was just like reflecting about how much we know, how much the rich man knew. He knew all the laws. He was knowledgeable. He was good, and yet he was not ready to fulfill his duties and take that leap. So he was still kind of stuck on the earthly paradigms, which is it's incredible how you can take like a figure like him that so well represents where we all our humanity truly stands. So I was thinking to ask you, how is it that you deal with this difficulty on your daily life of like just like the rich man, not that we know so much, but we know something, right? We know what is right to do, and yet so often we fail, right, to fulfill our duties. Not saying that that happens a lot to you, but in whenever it happens, how do you deal with that?
Yeah, it's very hard, and thankfully we have spiritism that is here to comfort us and guide us and offer us all of the knowledge. Yet bringing it into the practical aspect of it is really what is hard, because it's basically demanding that we sprout out and grow and flourish ourselves. But I count my friends. I count on the assistance of being able to talk it out. I think about my own humanity. I think about how far I've come. I know how far I still have to go, but I don't get discouraged about that. And it's been hard, but I've also realized that um, you can't speed up a natural process, just like a plant. There are phases to it until it truly blossoms into a beautiful flower, beautiful whatever you love. I love flowers. And I've learned from nature about that. And I used to be very hard on myself. I sometimes still am. Taking taking a deep breath and understanding that it's all a process, right? Because we're going to make mistakes. We are. It's inevitable. I think that the more we are aware of ourselves, the easiest it becomes to develop this kindness towards oneself as well, and understand that we are human, that we are here to try to evolve, to progress. And it's going to be hard, but it's going to be possible. We just need to look at how far we've come so that we feel encouraged. How do you
Yeah,
deal with it?
I agree with you. I think that it needs to be in what you were describing is, I would say, a very good definition of self-love. So I think in this process we have to combine uh, a renewed commitment to do our best each day in the fulfillment of the law with a good bit of compassion towards ourselves. So if we have these two components in the formula, we are in a good place to have the strength to get up and to continue despite of how many times we will fall and we will commit the mistakes, because the text in the gospel is very clear. It is one of the hardest thing for us to do because our humanity is still very, very driven by our self-interest. And you said in the lecture towards the end, I think citing Manuel Filomeno de Miranda, that, you know, part of a more evolved society is a society where the community is above any individual. So we are driven to deliver what's best for all as opposed to what's best for for me, for myself, right? So we are, and in the Spirit's book, we're going to learn that, you know, on this planet, it is very, very, very rare to find anything that is done where self interest is not part of the equation.
Mhm.
So it's a big ascent that we have in front of us when it comes to that. So knowing that can help us to set our minds and set our intent. I really love this idea. What is my intent for this day? What is my intent for this life? Right. So my intent is that I want to bring this vision, this knowledge into my everyday action. And as you work on that intent, it stays with you and it kind of comes up, when you need that and helps you to kind of process and elaborate things on the go. So I think I deal with that the same way that you do. I am one thing that helps me is this awareness. Uh, I try to live each day very consciously, meaning bringing this awareness and this intent, observing my relationships, observing everything that I'm doing, making sure that every single action, wherever I am, whether work or my home or at the center with people, that I am giving each moment my very best. So sometimes at the end of the day, you say, well, I failed to give my best here and there, right? But that's it. I think that, like I said, the more human we are, the more we can embrace our own humanity. We set ourselves to success because guilt and self punishment does not help us to move forward. On the other hand, we get stuck on the cross, we nail ourselves down to the cross, and we can't really move anymore. So, yeah, that's Kirsten is here with us. Hey, Kirsten.
Hey, Kiers.
Nice to see you. And Patricia, I just want to say hi to Patricia. It's been a while since I've seen her, so good to see you. We have still a few minutes here, so if anyone wants to put a question, put a comment, make any observations. Thank you, Carlos. We always appreciate having you here. All right. So if no one has anything else to say, that was great. Thank you, Andrea, again for the wonderful lecture.
Thank you.
And we are going to close our meeting with our final prayer. Um, I'm going to ask Andrea to do it.
All right. While still feeling enveloped by the benefactors who overlook the works conducted by the Conscious Living Spirit as groups, activity, and also our own spirit guides that are with us, our mentors, our guardian angels. Let us elevate our thoughts in gratitude to our Master Jesus, who is the safe haven that we have, the shelter of our lives. When the storms are painful and difficult, we know that we can find in you that moment of peace that we so much need, a safe place where we can shed tears, where we can talk about our victories, where we can ask for guidance. We are so very thankful for you are our sun, our way, our truth, and our life. We ask you, dear Jesus, that you bless everyone watching at this moment, their families, their homes, and keep us connected always through the loving ties of our souls as we keep on developing the sense of solidarity and fraternity, and we look at each other as brothers and sisters in humanity, that we may be always compassionate with one another, not only encouraging but uplifting, for our world has had enough of shaming, of pointing fingers, of intolerance, of the lack of love. Help us to look for this light, to keep searching for the light and maintain it as we are walking through our own existence, being aware, being vigilant, and always being reminded of the need to pray so that we may connect with your missionaries of love. Thank you so much for this morning, and so be it.
Thank you, Andrea. Thank you, everyone who has joined us this morning. We would like to remind you, as always, that we have our meetings and our courses online. You can visit us on our Facebook page, and you will see all the flyers and invitations for all our courses. You can always reach out to us if you need, Andrea, myself, if you need further information. And also, as always, if you can, if you're able to, remember that we still, although we are operating currently online, we are looking for another place. We will be hopefully soon finding a new home. And as always, we're going to need your financial assistance so we can get ready for our new home here in Miami. Thank you so much. Have a great Sunday, everyone.
Bye, everyone.